So warm welcome to everyone who's joined us 3 minutes before our 6 p.m. start time. We realized that we've started recording beforehand, and we love if you've joined us before as well. And it's a good morale booster to have people waiting on you while you start talking and presenting your perspective. We have for you in this edition of our Wednesday chats something about trust. We have I'm sorry, I'm blanked out. Let's do this again. We could cut this out. But welcome to our session, week 14, and we're super happy to talk about trust today. How trust and mindfulness work together is something that is really fascinating to me. I feel like when we trust somebody and we show up in the moment looking like we trust that the other person will do the right thing for both them and me in that moment, I feel that we share the responsibility of a relationship, and that brings about a beautiful consciousness in that moment. And today we're going to talk about trust because we'd like to see this concept through a few different lenses. How much trust we have in our world today, what could be the reasons why in our relationships sometimes trust could be an issue, and again, how do we show up in these moments of trust, and how can we make a slight difference or a change in how we show up so that the other person can sense it. These are topics we're going to talk about, along with a meditation that Lorian will lead, and also one that Oliver would lead, sort of finish up with. We have a lot going on this week, and I hope you enjoy this chit chat and dialogue and exchange of rich minds coming together to make this a special edition. So thank you for signing in or listening to us after, if you've signed in after the podcast was live. So to bring in the first question this evening, I've written it down actually, so I'd better read it. For us, the first question is the trust problem. And I know we mentioned that we were talking about this even before we started our podcast today, guys. How are we defining the problem of trust? What has your experience been of how people either trust you or you've seen trust played out in a relationship? Tell us a little bit about your experiences, please.
Sure. Shall I start? Do you mind if I kick off?
Sure.
Cool. Lovely. So I think thinking about this recently, I think trust is about our ability to predict. So we are sort of predicting engines, if you like. So we are checking, what is going on around us and what is going on inside us. There's internal and external feeds going on, and our brain is trying to predict what is going to happen next. And I think that's really at the heart of trust. Can I realistically and reasonably predict the behaviors of people in my life? And the people who are more likely to be in my life are people whose behaviors I am more accurately able to predict, even if they are potentially unpredictable in a conceptual sense, right? So you can have some people who behave erratically and you may have an affinity with them, but that will be based around a degree of prediction in respect of the unpredictability of certain elements of their behavior. And that in turn will sort of formulate part of the prediction pattern you're making. So I think in essence, trust is about predicting. Can we predict that people are going to be abiding the laws of the road? Are people are we able to predict that people will abide the laws of the land, etc.? Am I able to predict that I can get food from the supermarket? All these sorts of things, all these prediction engines. And so the more uncertain we are in the world, the more chaotic things seem to be, the less we feel we can accurately predict, then the bigger issues we are going to have with the concept of trust, because our prediction models are broken down. And that might be because there's been a pandemic and we can no longer predict the integrity of our health, or the ability, or the fact that other people might not be, or are more likely to be a danger to us than we originally predicted, right? Even members of our own family, people in a supermarket, etc., etc. Or the fact that you might not be able to go to work because part of the measures of a pandemic were restricting people's movement and restricting people's access to livelihoods. So all those things flip our prediction models on their head. All the things that we took as certain, all the things that we thought we could rely on, are turned inside out, upside down. And I think that can shake the foundations of our sense of trust and prediction. And I think that's where a lot of us feel that we are potentially at the moment, wherever we sit on the political spectrum or the geo events spectrum of things. There is a lot, or there appears to be a lot of turbulence, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of the things that we held to be stable, reliable institutions perhaps are perhaps not feeling quite so secure.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Lorraine. Yeah, you've shared a thing, just echoing on the uncertainty. If we remember that this is something we have discussed, but definitely I think we'll continue to discuss, because I think all of these trust issues, or even afflictions day to day, these depression, all these are all related to this feel of uncertainty. I think it was last week I quoted someone that I really like that quote, because uncertainty is almost, I should say, it cannot be get rid of. Right? With the spirit of mindfulness, of course, we have the acceptance and then allow and all these. Once this uncertainty is accepted, depending on what level.
Welcome to everyone who's.
Okay, once this uncertainty is accepted, and then it makes a lot of difference, it makes completely difference. I think somehow this trust is something also paradoxical, if that's a word, right? It's uncertain, but if we accept this uncertainty, then it's a different world. Anyways, it may sound more than a solution or than a question. But to answer Avanti's question too, this is my real life experience. I think I started with very hard to trust, and maybe not trusted by others too, because in exchange. But over time, especially the past decade or a couple of decades, it's been a great change. So part of that, or maybe the majority part of that, is this realizing the nature of uncertainty, and kind of, as you accept it more and more, and then the trust is more and more easier. And so the reason I said paradoxical is sometimes if you don't ask for trust, you already have it. And of course, it's culture related also. Well, some may think I just say culture in general, because sometimes it's within religion or within a certain kind of philosophy. For example, in Confucius, it's not a debate, but it starts with the human nature is good, because if we really think, believe, or trust that the human nature is good, then that probably give us a little bit more certainty, right? That's certainty to be found. And then there are, I think, maybe certain level of Buddhism say that also is this great awareness, great clarity, whatever word you put it, is kind of like the human nature or the beings, the nature is good too. And of course, in some other cultures, people don't think so, or there are religions who don't teach it this way also. So there's two kinds. I think that's also related to, in this sense, maybe some kind of education. Of course, before education, you need to make sure why certain philosophy says it's good, why certain philosophy is not good, right? If that is by reasoning, that is realized in our mind, then we have that view, even though we still have the habit of less trust, lots of uncertainty, then at least there's a direction. So this is also culture related with the topic of trust. Anyways, I think I have good experience, at least on changing myself over time. And also, I very much agree with Lauren on the expectation, because if there is uncertainty and you can't come to the conclusion, you have to kind of expect. And expectation is also paradoxical also. I may be talking a little bit more, but this relates to the later answers to later questions. The more the expectation, or the more incorrect of the expectation, the more chance of disappointment or the feel of less trust. Right? Same as uncertainty, along that same direction. Okay, anyways, that's what's in my mind right now. You're muted. You're muted, Avanti.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to say that it's such a good topic. I mean, it's something that we all passionately believe and work with as professionals. So I think this comes very naturally for us to sort of examine where our definitions of trust come from. And I think, Lauren, the way you've put it, I think is so powerful, also because as we grow up, we depend on our parents to have consistent behaviors, which is how we've learned trust. And whether or not that is the best way to be even in our adult lives is something that is up for discussion. And I think that's the whole idea here. But also I like when Oliver says that it's almost like I need you to be you so that I can define myself. Right? So my parameters of who I am depend on who I see you to be. So if I see you as, it could be, let's take any topic. So it could be, if I see you as very controlling, then I become the other end, which is a complementary skill to you. Or if I become too liberal, then you become more controlling because someone has to rein it in. So I think in our relationships or in our economies also, or the polarized markets that we are politically, economically, we are sort of going to extreme ends so that we can almost catastrophize our opinions to such an extent that the other person is, or we're hoping that the other person would come to an in-between or to a middle ground. But I don't see that happening yet because we're still finding spaces in those extremities that we can stretch these boundaries out. So it's quite delicate. But what I also wanted to say was when for me, trust means because we've grown up believing that consistency is trust. I have come to a point in my life where I realized that I wanted everyone to think like me because I want to trust them. So if I did not think that the other person thought like me, the exact same parameters, then I cannot trust them. When they say one for all and all for one, I have a basic problem with it because maybe we don't believe or we don't agree with my neighbor who is on a vigil to put somebody in prison, and I don't agree with that person. But for the fact that we live close by and tomorrow she might be able to help me with something, if I have to take this stance, we are forcing similar thought processes because we want to believe the other person trusts us. I don't know if that makes sense. Are you still guys with me?
Still with you. Yeah. No, some interesting thoughts there. There's a lot to unpack here, isn't there? And I think what I'm hearing is that we, again, this is about the prediction that we're talking about, the trust in people. We want to put people into boxes, and that's very resource efficient for our brains, right? So we want to do that. So we want to surround ourselves. There's a natural tendency to want to surround yourself with like thinking people, which is where you end up potentially with the problem of groupthink and the problem of not having the correct checks and balances in place. Because if you just surround yourself with people who agree with you and who are on the same political position as you and on the same social topics as you, then you've got no one to challenge your thinking. And if your thinking happens to be wrong, and our thinking always happens to be wrong at some points somewhere along the line to a greater or lesser extent, right, then we can really go down a difficult path that can become harder and harder to pull ourselves back from, because we've got less checks and balances in place to try and rein us back in, to offer us the potential for course correction. So yeah.
That is so beautifully reworded or synergized. I think it's, and I think the more we dwell on it, and hopefully after this meditation, but I think there is room that ourselves we could change as well. But it's interesting to have this exchange of thoughts. So I'm looking forward to going into the next two questions. But before that, I think we need a meditation to ground ourselves.
All right, lovely. Thanks, Avanti. So yeah, I'm going to lead us in a metta, a loving kindness, loving awareness practice. I feel we feel that that's probably a good meditative practice to help us navigate tonight's topic and to help us find a sense of compassion and connection with ourselves and with those around us that can help us navigate this landscape of trust more skillfully. So if you would like to join us, then please just sit yourself a little bit more upright, if that is okay for you. So if possible, if this works for your body, that the back is not supported, it's sat a little bit away from the surface. But if you need to lie down, then that's absolutely fine, of course, also. And as always, listen to the needs of your body. So if you need to adopt a specific posture for your body, then please do so. And this practice can be done eyes open or eyes closed as you prefer, possibly easier to do with eyes closed. So if you're happy to, just let the eyes gently close or lower the gaze. And take a couple of settling breaths. Taking mental notes of how this moment feels. Whether there's a general sense of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neither. Whether there's any particular thought patterns fighting their way around your mind. Whether they're future thoughts, past thoughts, or something else. And then just checking in with the sense of the physical body, whether there's anything particularly uncomfortable, or whether it feels relaxed and calm. And there's no right answer to any of these questions. The invitation is to simply note the present moment and the present experience that we find ourselves with. And with this metta practice, this loving kindness, loving awareness, we're going to consciously intone phrases in our mind or out loud if we prefer, inviting positive effect into our life or into the lives of others. And sometimes it can be very challenging for us to bring a sense of goodwill to ourselves. And if that's the case for you, then bring to mind someone with whom you have an uncomplicated relationship. Someone for whom it's easy to feel positive and well-intentioned towards. But if it feels okay to, then you can allow yourself to apply these well wishes, these good intentions to yourself. May you be happy. May you be happy. Something so simple. And allow yourself to see this person or yourself being happy, in a state of happiness, of contentment. And allow the experience of that to fill the mind. May you be happy. May you be safe and well. Notice any feeling quality or emotional effects that these statements bring to the body, to the mind. May you be free from suffering. And you can use whatever phrases feel authentic for you, as long as they are made with genuine, wholehearted intention. May you find and follow a path that uplifts you. May you find opportunity and challenge. And again, allow yourself to see the person or yourself experiencing these conditions, these well wishes. Let it fill your senses. What does it look like? How does it sound? What's the quality of the experience? And breathe in that space. May you be happy. May you be safe and well. May you be free from suffering. And simply rest in this space for a minute or so longer. Notice any changes in experience in the body. Any change in the nature of the thoughts. And simply whether this moment is pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. May you be happy. And just come back to the breath, paying attention to the experience at the tip of the nose. Noticing the rhythm of the breath, whether it's deep or shallow. Breathing in, breathing out. And whenever you're ready, just gently opening your eyes, coming back to the space that you're in. Maybe have a gentle stretch, look around the room, have a sip of water or drink if you wish to. And just take a moment as to how that practice felt this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are in the world, whenever you're watching this. Was it easy, intuitive? Was it challenging? Is there anything you noticed about the nature of your experience with your mind through this practice? Thank you.
That was beautiful, Lauren. You know, when I was listening and practicing the meditation, I had this really angry beginning to it. The moment you said unsettling, and the more I heard, may you be well, may you be well, I think it sort of worked on the anger. So it really helped bring some peace in. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's so important, the language we use, right? And I think we're so often unconscious of it, and it can seem contrived to do a practice like that unless you actually practice it and discover, as you're saying, that the felt experience that it delivers. But we're so careless with the language that we use with ourselves and with our conversations with others, and it has such a powerful effect. So being more conscious with the language, more skillful with the language we use in relation to ourselves and to others, can have an incredibly transformative effect on the felt experience of our lives and the lives of those we care about.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like we have another topic that we could line up around the language we speak with ourselves. Thank you so much. Moving on to our next segment, or the next question, should I say. Now that we've defined sort of what our perspectives are in terms of trust issues, what are some factors that allow us to trust somebody? What are your thoughts on it? How do we build trust with someone? Is it spontaneous? Does it take time? How does it work for you?
I think that there's an interesting phrase, and I can't remember who I heard discussing this, because we all recycle the wisdom of other people, is that there's sort of two broad brush approaches to trust. And one is that you have to earn my trust, and that I don't trust you until you prove that you're worthy of it. And the other approach is that, well, I by default assume you're trustworthy unless you prove otherwise. And those are two fundamentally different approaches, and how you apply those will probably govern who you attract in life. And I think the assuming that you are in some way worthy or of the of a significant enough position to demand that others prove their trust to you is probably a bit of an audacious position to be standing in, and is not probably conducive to healthy relationships. Now, of course, some people have been very badly damaged in life and by life, and will find it harder to adopt a position of trust as default. However, some, in spite of the horrific experiences in their life, still find themselves able to stand in a position of trust first. So I'm loath to say there's a right or a wrong, and it's always depends on experience. But I do think standing from the position that, yeah, expecting other people to demonstrate their trustworthiness to you before you will trust them, before you will, in essence, perhaps the subtext here is that you are refusing to reciprocate trust unless trust is demonstrated to you. So, you know, you have to be vulnerable before I'm prepared to be vulnerable, and then that's a sort of a zero-sum game kind of thing, isn't it? And that's not a great standing for a long and healthy relationship, in my humble opinion. That's my initial thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. I think in daily life, it's time, or maybe how you start with someone. You know, this is the original relationship. If he's a relative, friend, or family member, it's usually take less time, easier to trust than someone you totally don't know, because you want to get familiar with the pattern over time. Once that's more predictable, per what Lauren has shared. But I like to share some story. Maybe this will tie to the couple of key points I brought on the first part of the conversation. There's a lady, she's from Taiwan. She had a brother that was in the military. And then by accident, her brother was killed by another, like a soldier in the same in the same team. Of course, it was brought to court, and just per regular, the legal process. Of course, that the killer, of course, was sentenced to, I thought it was death penalty, because there is death penalty, death sentence there. And this lady actually was able to persuade her mother to withdraw the case, right, without suing the other soldier, the killer. And of course, the other family was very moved by this, and it ended up well, because the reason was simple for this lady, because my brother is already dead, right? No matter what you do, you can't bring him back to life. But if the other soldier is dead, and then there's continued tragedy for the other family also. Anyways, I think this is a trust per Lauren's one approach, right? You trust someone, and I think this trust is good too, because I have examples of this. This lady later on, actually over her life, became a kind of Mother Teresa type of, loving, and all these charity, philanthropy, all these kind of courses. She did pretty good, very, very, actually became a very known figure, at least among the Chinese or the charity culture. One other general that just hit me on this topic too was somebody in the Chinese history, also back to 2,000 years ago. This general was interesting. He just same approach. He trusts everyone, but he was betrayed by so many people also. Well, luckily, the people that was loyal, didn't betray, was still the great majority, because there's such amount of other talents that was around him. That was also why he was able to kind of changing history. I guess my point is, if we start with that approach, especially when you understand why is that, right? How we understand uncertainty, because if you just go to search certainty, it probably is not there anymore. Anyways, it's not there, right? But if you just give up the idea of looking for this uncertainty, just leave that kind of free fall, if you will. Well, that also give other people trust, and in turn, you win back trust also. I guess I like that approach. No matter how much I am able to do it, but I like it, and I found it's trainable, right? By first realizing less expectation, trust that human nature is good also, right? Even somebody make mistakes or make you unhappy or even hurt you, trust them. That will give not only loss to others, but back to yourself also. That's how I look at it.
Very hard to do, but you're quoting here that it's trainable.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. I mean, also with Lauren, how you began, I have read that men and women trust differently. I cannot talk about other genders or on the spectrum here because it's not studied, but I feel like men are able to take risks, and they're encouraged from the very young ages to take risks. But with women, they're asked to be careful, and they're protected, and they're risk averse compared to men. They've also gone through a lot more trauma. So there is a liability for women to continually keep showing trust. I think from that spectrum, from personal experience, I feel like I can trust somebody better when I'm in a phase where my cup is full. When I'm exhausted, my trust levels go down because my intuition doesn't work. I'm not able to cognitively reframe perspectives to give the other person the benefit of doubt. Do you see? So it is thought-wise more exhausting to let go of the other person when I'm tired myself. But when I feel like I'm taken care of, that I give myself care, I'm able to trust others a lot better because I feel more confident in my own body to take care of myself, to set my own boundaries. And therefore, I feel like trust depends on the day you meet me, right? And so it is also why I do not believe that I want to consistently show up a certain way, because what if I'm having a bad day? Maybe you don't think I'm trustworthy because I'm not able to keep up what I was like in my last interaction with you. So it's adding on responsibility to keep showing up as trustworthy. But I understand where you come from, Lauren, and I respect that. I think it's how much trust you give others is what you get back. So absolutely. In fact, there is this quote by Brené Brown. She says, trust is defined as choosing to make what's important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else, right? Distrust is defined as what I shared with you is not safe with you. So trust is defined as choosing to make what's important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. So if we're able to take the risk and remove the certainty from the outcome of that transaction or that interaction, I think there is a possibility of trust growing. But again, this is hypothesis. I mean, we're trying out trust in our relationships constantly. So maybe if you ask me 6 months down the line, my response is going to be something different. Yes.
I think research is always ongoing on this as well, which is why it's always such, the concept of psychology and behavior is always an evolving, or currently is continuously evolving. We may reach a conclusion with it, but it's constantly evolving. And I mean, you touched on things there, I think, with the sort of the psychology traits of neuroticism and openness. And I think if you are high in trait neuroticism and low in trait openness, you're very likely to be untrusting of others, right? Because you are more anxious, more scared about the world, and you are less adventurous into the world. Whereas conversely, if you're high probably in trait openness and low in trait neuroticism, it's going to be the other way around. You're probably going to be presenting yourself as, yeah, that's fine, I'll trust you because I'm outgoing, and because I'm low on the neuroticism scale. Therefore, I don't see as much danger, and I'm happy to be out there and connect with other people. And that probably creates the environment in which trust can blossom readily. Whereas conversely, it's going to be a much more challenging position to operate from. And yes, and I agree with you and Brené. She'll be very pleased I'm agreeing with her, I'm sure. Because when we next have a chat, she'll be saying, Lauren, I'm glad that we agree on that. On the, it is about sharing the vulnerable aspect, and the more open you're willing to be, and the more comfortable you are with that, the more strength you demonstrate. And that's what I think people overlook with vulnerability, is that it's a courageous strength rather than a weakness.
Rather than a weakness, absolutely.
I think you brought up a excellent point on only when oneself is contained, or trust oneself, or whatever, right? That you, the way that you said it, is almost like, it's like a fireplace, right? If you are a fireplace, not only you have the heat yourself, you are warm, but you'll be able to, and only by being that fireplace, you'll be able to irradiate those heat to others, right? As compared if one is piece of whatever, stone or ice, that's different. So I think that ties to also also I have shared also trainable, how that be trained. I guess start with some of these viewpoints, making sure if they are true or why they're true. For example, if human nature is if we really know that human nature is good, then everything else that looks like not good is temporary. Right? It's not the nature itself; it's the something. At least not that nature is something, some kind of attachment or whatever, right, to that. So it's removable. And then in that, I think back to that lady, maybe by whatever the other soldier has done, it's ferocious, right? He killed, but still, I think there's a trust on he will be good, he can be good. Probably what he needs is at least that I can contribute is give him the forgiveness, that kind of thing. By being able to give that forgiveness, you are the fireplace already, right? You're contained, you have the trust. Yeah, I think that's training oneself to start with, because it's, I guess, but that's also how mindfulness come to play, because mindfulness helps us to know ourselves, to know the ability of ourselves, to know really the power, the internal power of ourselves, get that train us to be more like that fireplace.
Yeah, and resilient, absolutely. Yes, and I think mindfulness plays an important part. Thank you for bringing that context back, Oliver, because I think mindfulness is really being able to be transparent with yourself and be truthful to yourself, to say, at this time, I know this person probably needs more trust from me, but am I in a position where I can stick to what the other person is requiring me to do? If not, to be compassionate and say, it's okay, maybe now is not the best time, where the other person can can get my trust. We just wait out till we become resilient, build our reserves back up, and go back at a time when we are more healed to then allow more space to the other person as well. Yeah. And I mean, maybe I should talk about this in the next question, but another question we have, there is so much to say about here. But my final question here was the comparison of trust that we want others to have in us versus how much trust we place in them. Is it the same? Do we always give the amount of trust we expect in return?
It's a cheery question. I don't know that there's a simple answer.
We didn't say we do easy things on this.
That's right. We don't want simple questions. I mean, what I would put out there is that I think trust is the fundamental currency that we have with each other, and trust underpins our financial currency as well, right? So if you think, the banknotes or the digital format of the banknotes that we rely on are based on trust, that I give you this currency and you give me goods in return because you're gonna that money has a value. Right, and that's all based on trust. It has no intrinsic value. It's a trust-based system, and trust is the currency that we operate with each other. So as I sort of opened at the start, this sort of the sense of prediction, the predictability that we have with each other, that if I behave in a certain way, that you're going to behave in a certain way back again. And that sort of trusting in them from the extremes of the laws of nature and physics around us that sort of bind us together, to our interactions with ourselves and to our understanding of our own sort of selves and mental outlook. And I guess this is where mindfulness comes back in and can help us, because it can help us understand ourselves. Because a lot of people, particularly when they are having difficulty with their mental health, don't feel that they can trust themselves or other people, right? It's one of those two things break down catastrophically, either because something's really happened or because of the perception that things have happened, right? And so that erosion of trust, that collapse of trust can be catastrophic for our mental health and well-being, which has a knock-on effect to our physical health and well-being. So using mindfulness as a tool to navigate our own mental landscape, to understand actually what's going on, to recognize thoughts, feelings, emotions for what they are, and to help us piece together the narrative of our lives where appropriate, can help us restore a narrative of trust within ourselves, which can help us build trust again with other people. And I think fundamentally, if we don't trust ourselves, we're never going to trust other people, because I think fundamentally those two things contradict. They can't work side by side. I think if you might need other people, right? If you don't think you can trust yourself, but I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can really trust other people, he says.
I think
more thought required.
Yes, I think that is very well put. Absolutely. Absolutely. To be able to trust in yourself will then mean that you can trust another. Absolutely.
Yeah. So wonderful point, Laurie. I think also tied to our whatever we have talked today, right? If you feel the inner warmth, and that's trust. Actually, you guys reminded me this trust is one of the tenets of mindfulness. Because when you were asking these questions, even on the chat, I was thinking kind of relationship or or day to day. Yeah, and then now I realize that's the one of the tenet, right? 7 tenets. When I explain this trust tenet of trust, I use a picture. It's a lady, just a lady figure standing just next to a wall, but there is a light, beam of light that shoot the image of her onto the wall, so that of course that shadow was much bigger, and then it looks like a super super woman, let's say, right? Super girl. And usually, I guess without this mindfulness training or a certain way of training, by our culture today, by what we are usually regularly educated in the school system, we don't have that. We don't know how much real potential that we have as an individual. So I guess trust oneself also started with this mindfulness training. Because to the mindfulness training, to the mindfulness, I think the principle is pretty simple and straightforward also, right? Because we delusion ourselves so much. Mindfulness is nothing that magic than just let you realize we're actually just making things up. If we have fear, if we don't have trust, all those are the things that we just made up. To the example Lorraine has brought up, if you have some kind of that issues or depression or that psychological issues is less trust in yourself, but of course that's because of you are making things up even more, right? More seriously than the regular people. So I think that trust is there's a way. Mindfulness is great to start, but back to the question, how much you trust others or you expect others to trust you. I guess it is a personal choice. If just talk about in daily life, right? I think from the beginning I was talking about there are theories that let you actually can have that trust to others without worrying too much. Just try it. Even there's a failure, it's not ultimate failure, right? Stand up, trust, continue trust. I think one get definitely more feedback or I guess more gain than starting with two. Imagine if you're just careful, don't start the trust at all.
Right.
I think that's a long duration tragedy, I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
It's impossible to live without trusting, is what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, from my end, and I'm mindful of time, so I won't go back to both your responses again. But for me, how I like to show up is I try not to pressure myself to always show trust in people. I genuinely believe that people are trying their best. And I want to accept the way they show up for me. That is one way. But also, I try to remind myself that it's about perception, right? And going back to what you said very early on, Lauren, is when we use terms like distrust, mistrust, or betrayal as a contrast of trust, I think it makes it sound more grave. It makes it bigger than it really is, because people are changing, situations are changing. So if we look at it from a perspective of everyone's acting from the place or the situation that they're in right now, right? And if you try to understand their behavior and be compassionate around it and say, they're acting like this because they're in a situation which calls for that. And then it makes it easier to forgive or to release that anger that we hold against the other person through this betrayal. So that is one way I deal with it. And I'm trying to. It's not perfect. There's a long road ahead of me. So no guarantees here. But when the other person in front of me does not show up to me with trust either, then I'm saying, you know what, maybe she's just having a tough time at this point in her life. And when the time is right, she will bring that trust back. And until then, I keep showing up with the trust that I have in her. So I let my currency show up more in that situation. So I don't yeah, I'm feeling very wordy today. So thank you for sticking with me, you guys. It makes yeah, you are showing trust in me at this moment, and I appreciate that. But to be able and compassionate, to see how the person shows up, and to be trustworthy, but also have boundaries that make sure that you're not hurt to an extent. So I think that is probably where my life experiences has brought me to so far.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think the footnote there, I think you're getting to is that it's important to be vulnerable, but not too vulnerable, and you can sort of overshare in life and things like that, right? And yeah, you need to go out with the spirit of kindness and good intention and best endeavors. But that doesn't mean that you have to lay everything on the table every time in all contexts, because that's probably not wise either. So yeah,
that's it. Okay.
Wonderful point.
Conversation. I'm glad we actually reached to some sort of semblance of yeah.
Oh, that's a wonderful point. You almost made me want to change my mind from a silent meditation to a contemplation on what you have just said. Yeah.
Let's do it. We're looking forward, and we have some time. So
okay, yeah, I think since we started a bit early, or we'll just do a very short one, but let's do a combination then. And I'd like to invite you to maybe sit straight. I know Lauren always allow any position that's make you comfortable. I think this kind of trainings, if you sit straight, it will help with a lot more clarity. Relax, shoulder, hands, the two legs, no matter you are sitting on a chair with 2 feet on ground or cross-leg in a cushion or chair, just relax. Let's watch our breath for a moment. Okay, if you are okay, and then let's just contemplate on what Avanti has just brought up. See if you can bring to you something that's happened. For example, someone, colleagues or family members were angry at you, yelling, not too intense, just something in the middle level of intensity. Just check at that moment, that very person, was he or she just totally out of control of themselves, or is there anything that was just personal to you? There are different ways to see this in the traditional meditation, Buddhism. For example, there is the idea of emptiness. At this point, we can simply understand that as we are not that solid or solidly real. We are almost air. And imagine all those anger from the person, just like arrows. But if we are air, there's nothing can be hurt. And then of course we can check if that, again, that particular person that was just in a bad situation themselves, they were not prepared just to hurt you. Check if that is the case. Then let's do a 1 minute of silent. Okay, you may now open your eyes if they're closed. Stretch a little bit. Thank you very much for the short contemplation / meditation. Back to you, Avanti.
Thank you so much, Oliver. I think we needed that quiet after the conversations. There's a lot that I have taken from our conversation today, and I hope you have both, as well as our audience. I think there was a lot spoken today. Please leave us your comments, your thoughts for us to reflect and add into the conversation. This is something that we're all talking at this time in our world, and we're hoping to make our worlds better. So we look forward to listening and hearing in from you. A quick announcement, post the 30th of August, between September and the first week of October, we will take a break from doing our live streaming. There's a lot of activity happening on the ends of all of us here. And as much as we love doing this every week, there are times that other priorities call us into. So we will announce and post this information on the website too, but make sure to like, share, and subscribe the clips that we're putting out, taking a lot of work and effort to do that. And please share the word that we're trying to spread here. With that, we'd like to thank you for your time. Have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.